friend of mine asked me to produce a video about Michael Voris in one of his videos. And if you'll look right below this video, you'll see a link directly to Michael's video. Basically, Michael is upset that everyone has the right to vote in America. He thinks that only the faithful, only the virtuous should be able to vote. Mr. Vorris thinks that all the rest of us just love abortion. Bring me the fetus! Bring me the fetus! He thinks that homosexuals are too ignorant to be allowed to vote. But who will sing at Rush Limbaugh's next wedding? Michael Voris says that democracy is doomed to failure. He also says that the only way to run this country is to use the same method the Europeans used to lift themselves out of the Dark Ages. Well, I'm now going to channel the legendary Philip DeFranco in order to respond to Michael Voris's video. Okay, if you'll hold on for just a moment now, I need to get ready. Here we go. Well, hello there, Mr. Voris. How are you doing, my man? Where should we start? I mean, how about the Middle Ages? Seems like a good place to start to me. Could you possibly have been referring to benevolent dictators like Vlad the Impaler? He was an okay guy if you don't mind heads. Hundreds of them, sitting on top of stakes, all the way up his driveway. Okay, maybe not. Maybe you meant a real sweetheart like Pope Gregory. Is there something that you find benevolent about the Inquisition? I think the Roman Catholic Church is still apologizing about that one. Maybe we should move forward just a bit. Gosh, there are so many choices. Perhaps you meant a benevolent dictator, such as the charming and delightful King Edward of Spain. I mean, all he did was force several 100,000 Jews to convert to Catholicism, or he just burned them at the stake if they refused. That would go over really well today, don't you think, Mr. Vorris? Imagine the reaction from the Anti-Defamation League when you tell them to toss those yarmulkes in the trash. Okay, maybe not a good idea. Perhaps instead, you meant someone like King George IV, and all he did was have sex with more women than Kareem Abdul-Jabbar? Nothing says respect for the sacred institution of marriage like hundreds of illegitimate children. You know, must have been interesting on Father's Day. All those ties. Maybe you meant someone like Marie Antoinette. Oof. You do have this thing about homosexuality, don't you? Well then, maybe you meant someone like Henry. I murdered 2 of my wives, the 8th? No? I could keep going. But I think you get my point, Mr. Vorris. The whole deal was just like bingo. I mean, most of the time you got sociopathic killers and or raging philanderers. Once in a blue moon, you might actually get a truly benevolent dictator. But it usually wasn't very long before one of their inbred siblings killed them in their sleep. Then you have a brand new benevolent dictator who demands you completely change and overhaul your religion. Otherwise, he'll roast you just like a marshmallow. Obviously, Mr. Vorris, you weren't paying close attention in your history class. Let's see how well you did in theology. Take Leviticus 15:19. Did you demand that your wife spend her entire menstrual cycle sleeping out in the backyard and make sure that no one touched her? Nobody even brushed up against her when she's, on the rack? No? Well, how about Leviticus 15:29? Once she's through with her monthly cycle, do you insist that she take 2 young turtles or 2 young doves down to the preacher? No again? Mr. Vorris, these are rules in the Old Testament, and I've never seen a memo from God rescinding them. Obviously, you pick and choose which rules you want others to follow, and which rules you choose to ignore, especially when you find the rules to be inconvenient. So how are you on the U.S. Criminal Code? You do know that calling for the U.S. to be led by a benevolent dictator, that comes real close to asking for people to overthrow the U.S. government. Have you ever heard of treason, Mr. Vorris? You commit treason, and you could wind up spending 30 years locked up in a small room with a guy named Bubba, who will lay his loving hands, and a few other things, on you every night. Mr. Vorris, it appears you've forgotten that the Puritans came here hundreds of years ago to escape benevolent dictators, just like the ones you're pining for right now. This is what happens when you forget or you ignore your history. You just keep repeating the same mistakes over and over and over again. Fortunately for you, even though you're this ignorant, in America, we still allow you to vote. Michael, I guess it's a good thing after all that you live in a democracy instead of under a benevolent dictator. Have a good day, Mr. Vorris.